Evolution hardwired the human brain with a negativity bias. To survive in a hostile environment, our ancestors developed a neural architecture that defaults to sympathetic nervous system activation, constantly scanning the environment for threats. In the modern world, this survival mechanism often misfires. The constant vigilance that kept early humans alive now generates a baseline of chronic physiological stress, rumination, and anxiety. For decades, the scientific consensus held that this architecture was permanent. Anatomists believed that once the adult human brain fully developed, its structural and functional properties remained entirely static. The advent of modern neuroimaging proved that assumption wrong. High-fidelity brain scans revealed experience-dependent plasticity, demonstrating that the brain physically adapts to repeated stimuli over time. This brings us to the mechanics of meditation. Stripped of mystical connotations, clinical meditation is simply the practice of sustained, directed attentional control. The central question in cognitive neuroscience is whether this deliberate control of attention can systematically override our evolutionary threat detection defaults and leave a permanent physical mark on the brain. To answer that, we have to isolate the data. We rely on systematic reviews of peer-reviewed studies, observing expert practitioners, individuals with a minimum of 3 to 5 years of sustained meditation practice. This Prisma flow diagram outlines our search, capturing 88 peer-reviewed records. Rigorous criteria strip out 31 irrelevant records. A heart filter excludes studies with novice practitioners or lacking high-fidelity fMRI, distilling the literature down to a highly curated dataset of 7 empirical studies. We analyze 2 precise categories within this dataset: functional connectivity, measured through fMRI blood oxygen level dependent signals, and structural morphometry, quantified by MRI gray matter volume. By applying these strict clinical criteria, we bypass subjective reporting entirely. We isolate the exact mechanical footprint of sustained attention on human neuroanatomy. Functional connectivity maps the synchronized firing of different brain regions during specific tasks or resting states. The default mode network connects the medial prefrontal cortex, posterior cingulate cortex, and left temporal parietal junction. It generates mind-wandering, self-referential thought, and baseline anxiety. A 2016 study observed a significant reduction in DMN fluctuation amplitude in expert meditators. This suppression creates what neuroscientists call spontaneous trait reactivation. The dampening of the DMN becomes the practitioner's permanent resting state, extending far beyond the active session. While the DMN powers down, other regions power up. A 2021 study mapped the simultaneous activation of task-positive networks during focused attention. The data pinpoints the intraparietal sulcus and anterior cingulate cortex. These neural nodes execute top-down attentional control. The relationship between the default mode network and these attentional nodes is inversely correlated. As attentional control fires, rumination ceases. Long-term practitioners demonstrate an extreme clinical proficiency in rapidly toggling between these functional states. Focused attention actively starves the neural circuits responsible for psychological suffering, while simultaneously fortifying the circuits required for cognitive presence. Repeated functional firing over years inevitably triggers a physical response in the brain's hardware. The tissue actually grows. Researchers measure this using voxel-based morphometry, a computational technique that calculates the precise volume of gray matter from high-resolution MRI scans. Studies by Hernandez in 2020 and Luters in 2009 recorded distinctly larger gray matter volumes in the brains of experienced practitioners. This structural hypertrophy is concentrated predominantly in the right hemisphere's frontal and temporal cortices. The orbital frontal cortex acts as the engine for emotional self-regulation and reappraisal of negative stimuli. A secondary volumetric increase occurs deep within the right hippocampus, dictating emotional stability. This growth also provides a defensive advantage. In 2007, Pagnoni and Sekic evaluated longitudinal data measuring age-related cognitive decline. Their MRI scans revealed that expert meditators exhibited a significantly decreased rate of gray matter loss in the putamen, the region critical for sustained attention. These structural changes characterize long-term meditation as a mechanical neuroprotectant, physically shielding the brain's attentional hardware from the atrophy typically associated with normal aging. These cortical changes are supported by alterations much deeper in the brain, originating from the physiological anchor of most meditation practices, respiration. Breathing and heart rate are governed by the medulla oblongata, located down in the lower brainstem. Vestergaard-Poulsen's 2009 MRI findings revealed a significant increase in gray matter density within this exact brainstem region in expert meditators. Structurally fortifying the brainstem directly optimizes the body's ability to trigger the parasympathetic nervous system, initiating the physiological rest and digest state. Moving from the ancient brainstem to the center of the brain, we find modifications to global network integration. Using diffusion tensor imaging, Lüders examined the corpus callosum, the central fibrous structure connecting the left and right hemispheres. The scans showed notably thicker callosal regions, specifically the anterior midbody, in long-term practitioners compared to control groups. This thickened white matter acts as a widened data highway. It allows for significantly faster integration and processing of information between the brain's two hemispheres. Directive activation re-engineers the brain at every physiological depth, from the ancient brainstem governing physical survival to the complex cortical superhighways governing unified thought. We began with a biological problem, an evolutionary negativity bias driven by a hyperactive sympathetic nervous system. The fMRI and structural data demonstrate that overriding this bias requires specific mechanical conditioning, not transient shifts in mood. This is the self-transforming brain. By deliberately triggering the parasympathetic nervous system, practitioners create an optimal physiological environment to actively modify neural networks. Sustained attention acts as the exact physical mechanism, the scalar tool, that dictates where and how this widespread neuroplasticity occurs. This process requires immense repetition. The structural hypertrophy documented in these studies is the result of thousands of hours of targeted network firing. The human brain is not a static endpoint of evolution. It is a continuously adaptable medium, highly responsive to the demands placed upon it. The brain's physical hardware is continually recompiled by the software of our attention. Our structural reality is a direct product of what we choose to focus on.